coming tonight. It is an honor for us to have Ruben Ortiz-Torres here to speak, but also to have his exhibition in our galleries. There's so much to say about Ruben, but I'll keep it fairly short. Ruben is an internationally recognized artist from Mexico City, a longtime resident of Los Angeles. He's extraordinarily busy. We're so glad he's here tonight. This fall alone, he's in group shows at the Museo Rufino Tamayo in Mexico City, the Museum of National Art in Mexico City. He's curated the Pacific Standard Time exhibition at MOLA in Long Beach called Mex LA, Mexican Modernisms. You'll find Ruben's work in collections throughout our country at LACMA, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, MoMA, and smaller spaces like the National Museum of Mexican Art. So with that, I'll just say again that we're so pleased that you're here, and I'll turn the floor over to you. Thank you, Ruben.
Hi, hello. Okay, well, first of all, I have to say that this is for me a kind of an interesting situation, because I guess as a professor from the University of California in San Diego, now I'm gonna have to talk about the work of a student from the university in Mexico City, actually. And I would have to say that I've been telling to some people that yes, I met this guy, I barely remember. I'm not gonna talk too much in third person, because then I'm gonna start sounding like some soccer players that I don't like. But so I'm gonna have to then switch into first person, although at the same time I don't know how much I can talk in first person about this, because a lot of has happened, and I assume it's not exactly the same person, although there's some relationship. What I'm gonna do is this. I'm gonna read a text, or fragments of a text. I'm not gonna read the whole text. These are fragments of a text that that I was invited to write for this book that is going to be published by the University of Illinois. The book is going to be called Punkademics, right? And I was asked to write a text that would have to do with my punk experience, if there was such a thing, which I'm not so convinced that it was exactly that, but I thought it was. And at the time, I was very convinced. So let's see. The text, the version that I have of the text right now has not been copy edited. So I think that my text is written in my excellent bad English. So if something is not totally understood between my accent and the text, I'll try my best to communicate afterwards, I guess. I'm just going to read, I guess, for half of the lecture. The rest of the lecture, I will talk about the show, because it seems to me that this will relate to parts of it, but not to the whole thing. So you guys might have some questions, or I suppose I can be then more specific about the show. But anyway, let's see how this works. I'm going to start right now. Who were they? What did they do? How did they sound, or what did they look like? If they were anarchists, I was one of them. The hillsides ring with "Free the People," or can I hear the echo from the dates of '39, with trenches full of poets, the ragged army, fixing bayonets to fight the other line. Spanish bombs rock the province. I am hearing music from another time. Spanish bombs on the Costa Brava. I'm flying I'm flying on a DC-10 tonight. This is from Mike Jones and John Mellor, Spanish Bombs, from the album London Calling, CBS Records, London, 1979, by The Clash. The Spanish Civil War was lost by Spain and civilization, but it was won by Mexico, when thousands of intellectuals and other political refugees were given asylum and showed up in its shores in 1939. Among them, there was the Andalusian anarchist teacher, José de Tapia, who realized that freedom had to be taught at an early age, before social pressures to conform would settle. He founded an alternative experimental utopian grammar school that I was so privileged to attend. Anarchism is not a fashion or an A inside a circle, it is morals, he told me later on. Mexipunks. Okay, now I'm gonna jump cut a little bit this other segment. Okay, I won a production grant. It became popular for photojournalists to take photos of punk kids and disenfranchised youth. My work seemed to be different since I was supposed to be a tribal member producing some kind of self-representation. Therefore, my pics were not anthropological, voyeuristic snitching, but perhaps the real exhibitionist thing. The famous Mexican photographer Graciela Iturbide wanted to meet me. Were these my 15 minutes? All of a sudden, I had to really learn how to make photographs, to have a solo show. The problem was that my only real punk friend was Paco, and in fact, he considered himself his own avant-garde experiment. By that time, I had already figured out that the kids with the leather jackets and thin sunglasses in Mexico that took pills and did outrageous things in parties in Mexico City were not into the socialist libertarian ideals that led me to them, but more into singing with bad English accents and diverging into new wave, gothic, new romantic, and other new trends. In the meantime, poor kids in the outskirts of Mexico City in a neighborhood called Santa Fe robbed a butcher shop to give steaks to the people. They called themselves the Sex Panchitos. Their lumpen proletariat sense of punk aesthetics involved sniffing glue, a stiff and spastic dance, and an incomprehensible slang that functioned more like ambient sound than dialogue. The genie had escaped its middle-class frivolous bottle to become a serious infection. I had to find or make the scene. Juan Carlos Lafontaine and his brother Mario live in the middle-class southern suburb of Villacuapa. Their Catholic mom kept the house impeccably clean. The decoration was elegant in its kitsch. Juan Carlos dressed in black like a priest, had an architectonic postmodern hairdo painted coal black, wore sunglasses, and played the scenes. Mario dressed in colorful drag with funky wigs, pop necklaces, and glasses. He was a fabulous soul singer. Both were uniquely chubby and wore makeup. Together, they were the unlikely legendary duet Maria Bonita. The roundness made them known also as Las Toronjas, the grapefruit. Juan Carlos would pull his brother into the stage, chained. Mario crawled, claiming he was so fat that he could not walk. The Botero painting-like scene and bizarre surreal performance would include sexualized and perverted versions of well-known lullabies and children's songs by Cricri in Spanish. If there was no possibility to commercialize the music and have radio play, and the scene had to be underground, then you might as well be as provocative as you wanted. By the time I met the band was splitting due to irreconcilable aesthetic differences. Juan Carlos was into gothic and electronic music, and Mario into soul and high energy. Both were promising stars of an advertising industry that could take advantage of their talents, information, and sensibilities in a palatable and more superficial way. They were excellent draftsmen in a pop manga way and earned good money making trendy ads for soda and car companies to spend on equipment, fashion, toys, books and records. They were incredibly sensitive to style. For Juan Carlos, politics was just fashion. Industrial and gothic music made him interested in black uniforms and constructivism in a confusion of fascist and socialist visuals. My idealist positions became relevant in relation to the image of his new band, since the industrial sounds were calling for a socialist look. He imagined suspenders, knickerbockers, long-sleeve undershirt with buttons, steel-toe boots, shaved head, and all circular framed glasses. Despite my still limited musical skills, if I could be that and hold a bass, I had a band. Alejandra and Rosalba were friends of my sister and a bit intellectual. Rosalba studied English literature, Alejandra architecture, and was interested in the arts. For Juan Carlos, that meant elegant dark dresses and sculptural hairdos with shaped designs that would hopefully imply celestial voices. So with 3 models or props and another keyboard player, he with some experience, called Carlos Garcia, that played with Juan Carlos in the band Das Happy, was ready to appear in television. Was it? Without much rehearsing, it seems it was, because it did. Juan Carlos did not speak English, but was convinced it was not necessary. He thought that his accessories, his precise clothes, and his hairdo immediately could communicate with Susie. Yes, the real Susie from Susie and the Banshees. If she would see him on the street, he imagined, if she would see him on the street, he imagined England as a place where he could be understood, full of people like him. There was no way to explain, that it also was a conservative place with old ladies drinking tea, ruled by the Tories and Margaret Thatcher. There were the girls. Okay, I'm gonna go to the end of this thing. Okay, and you may find yourself living in a shotgun shack, and you may find yourself in another part of the world, and you may find yourself behind the wheel of a large automobile, and you may find yourself in a beautiful house with a beautiful wife. And you may ask yourself, well, how did I get here? That's from David Byrne and the Talking Heads. And as for me, I came to the land of love and rockets. I have not found my rocket yet, but I did find love. Echo Park in Los Angeles is my hoppers. Maggie, Hoppy, and my cousin Speedy Ortiz are fictional characters from a comic strip, but seem as real and close as my friends and family, like anything I ever saw in representation. They would reveal me that in a city without a center, there cannot be a periphery. The sectarian divisions of my youth that separated punk from Latin and heavy metal in Los Angeles collapsed. Since the beginning, the Plugs were recording anarchist versions of La Bamba. Heavy metal and punk, not just mixed, but together with hip hop, can be an unlikely, artsy, and radical political vehicle like in Rage Against the Machine. Hear the sounds of my father's band are still remembered, are not a cause of shame anymore, as they blend with the twang of the Fender Telecaster, the blast of the sax, and the ageless tempo of rockabilly. Los Lobos music sounds better with the time, like good wine. Ruben Sano said in 1955, according to the liner notes of the record Cruising with Ruben and the Jets, the present-day Pachuco refuses to die. The present-day punk refuses to die because the style is not created or destroyed, it just transforms. I guess that's a segment of the text, and I guess I don't know how to proceed from here. I guess, I don't know if you guys have already seen the show or if you guys will see it later, but assuming that you guys have not necessarily seen it, I will just make a general description of it, because not all the images that are in, I mean, some of the photographs that are in the show, I guess, relate more directly to the fragments of the text that I read. The rest of the show that includes also some photographs and some paintings were actually photographs and paintings of friends of mine that I did sort of compulsively, I believe. I mean, my background, my training in Mexico City was very academic. The university, you see, the Academy of San Carlos in Mexico is the oldest art school in the Americas. And so the art, the way it was understood, at least when I was there, I mean, we had this very academic formation, and also it seemed to me that there was also this tradition of using visual arts, but particularly painting, to address all sorts of issues, whether they were personal or political or sexual. When I came to California, I discovered that it was not necessarily the case. I mean, going to CalArts, which in a way was like the opposite from Mexico City University, I almost felt like I had this kind of pasteurized artistic education, right? Like, I went from cold to hot, or from hot to cold, however you want to put it. And from the oldest art school in the Americas to one that wanted to present itself as the newest one, or one of the newest ones, right? And it was more experimental. And of course I was looking for that. Some of the pieces that are downstairs involved attempted experiments to work with new technologies that did not exist. One of the pieces downstairs is an attempt to make video art without video equipment, really. I just had like a Betamax machine and a Betamax camera that I used to shoot footage from the television and from these newscasts that I would see at the time. That if you guys see downstairs, I mean, you guys would see that a lot of them had to do with the war in Central America, which at the time was what was broadcast in the television, right? And as well as some other things, some other local incidents. There's this corrupt Mexican cop, and the Pope, Ronald Reagan, Marx, I don't know. The reality is that I couldn't, in order to present that piece, I had to, at the end, shoot the video, I mean, in Super 8. So I could project the Super 8 because there were no video projectors. Neither I had the means to edit the video. So I would scratch the film, we would paint the film, and then we would make this very expressionist thing that we would project, rear project using this Super 8. It's very, I suppose, very primitive Super 8 equipment. That piece was done in collaboration with a filmmaker whose name is Emanuel Lubezki, who now is a very successful cinematographer in Hollywood. He's done a lot of major films, but at the time we were just, I mean, now that I think, I mean, I found the footage, I found this Super 8 movie, I transferred it to video, and it seemed to me that it became interesting because the quality, it had this very raw quality that now there are programs that attempt to mimic that quality, that seem to attempt to replicate that rawness of that cinematographic quality of the video, that try to replicate Super 8. And yet this one seems to be rougher and seems to have this unique quality, and therefore it's an attempt to make an, I mean, the reality is that what we see today is not exactly what happened then, right? I mean, we're looking at this film that migrated to, I mean, this video that migrated to film and then migrates back to video, and I can present it in a way that I would have dreamed in those days to present. Although now that I think about it, perhaps the way we did it was more interesting. But I guess that sort of reflects that particular moment in time, right? Some of the people that appear in those photographs, some are not here anymore. Some of them died. Some of them, you see them dying in the work, right? Like my friend Ruben Bautista, who was this curator that died of AIDS, as a lot of friends and people related to the arts, or some other people died for other circumstances or disappeared. Some of them are still around and became successful artists on their own, or curators, or intellectuals. I don't know what else to say. I don't know if you guys have any questions, because I still feel very awkward talking about this experience that I don't know if it's fully mine. I mean, it has to be, but at the same time, since I'm removed and in somewhere else, I mean, it's a, yes.
How does it feel to be confronted with the past again, like in this beautiful show?
Well, it's very interesting to me because I'm also working the Pacific Standard Time, curating a show for the Pacific Standard Time Initiative. And I'm not really an art historian, I am an artist. And my approach to the show that I'm curating, I guess I take a lot of license in the sense that I'm not really trying necessarily to portray the past in an accurate manner. I'm trying to portray the past in a way that is meaningful to me, right? In a way, and this might be very uncomfortable for some art historians, but I'm trying to make more an art piece and to portray the past. And yet now I'm confronted with my own past here. And and still trying to reinterpret it in a way and trying to make meaning of it. So the one thing that I think it's, the reason what I believe I'm interested in this show now is that I am realizing that there is no past if there is no present. One of the reasons why we can have these shows, whether Pacific Standard Time Initiative or let's say in this case this show, it's because, in this particular case, because Amy Galpin was interested in these photographs, and there is this space that enabled for that to happen, and then we can sort of reinvent the past. Or are we reinventing the past? I don't think so. I think we're inventing the present. Because there is a context that might find these pieces interesting now, hopefully, then these pieces might be meaningful, and then we can construct a past. Without that, there's not, without a present, there is not a past, you know. I don't know, I mean, Mexico is a place with a lot of past, and not often a lot of present. And so, you know, compared with Los Angeles, it's the opposite situation. There's not all these resources to really make this history, but the history is available. Yet, if you don't make it or archive it or give it a shape, it disappears, and it's in this constant fragile. I mean, I think of the past that as this thing that is this very fragile thing that can disappear. However, of course, there's always this possibility of reconstructing. For me, it has been very interesting that I go to archives to do research for the exhibitions that I'm curating. Sometimes certain things are very well archived. Certain other things are not that well archived. And so part of what I can do to reconstruct the past sort of depends on the things that are available to make this. Sometimes things that I believe are very important or were very important, I cannot find. Some things that might not have been that important, I can find well, and I can, or in a way that I can make meaningful, and so therefore become meaningful. No, I don't think it's just a problem. I don't know. Perhaps I'm thinking. Let's say Maya civilization. Most Mayan literature disappeared, was burned by this guy. We're left with certain things that have become very meaningful. And we constantly have all these people reinventing the past or reinventing what the Mayans were based on the things that are left and also on their on their wishes and on their presence and on their situations, right? So I don't know if that responds to your question or in fact makes it even more confusing, but yes.
All right, so this body of work that you did that existed at this period of time in the past, which may not have been important in the past, but in retrospect of the future is more important now in the present, seems to have encompassed a certain kind of genre that I didn't see in other work here, which is the genre of video and photography. Did you choose that particular way of looking at this work because of the work that it was, because it was the punks and because of how it was to capture it? I mean, is this the first time you worked in video and photography? And is this the reason you expressed it in comparison to some of your paintings and some of the work that you've done before? And how has this overall influenced not only what you did, but who you are today?
Well, okay, it's kind of an interesting, I mean, my background is as a painter. I studied painting. I was very interested in photography. But I thought that photography is something, for some reason I had this idea that I could do easier. I don't know why. I thought, because it's a language that I was more familiar with. My family did not collect art. You know, we didn't have paintings in the house. I was exposed more to popular culture in a way, and I was exposed to the covers of albums. But I wanted to be an artist. I wanted to do high art because it was something more difficult for me, something that I thought was more valuable. And so I obsessively studied painting and drawing, as you can see, until I thought I had a certain kind of craft that now I don't know how useful it is to me because I don't do it anymore. I mean, now, at the same time, I realized that to deal with narrative, there were mediums that perhaps were more appropriate, such as photography and video. Video was out of the question. I didn't have an option. That did not exist. I mean, that was not taught in the school. It was just something that the television could do. After I did this experiment, a TV network called me. There was Televisa. They had this TV show. It was called Video Cosmos. And they wanted to produce video art, or they wanted to do a show about video art. They knew about Bill Bayola, and they wanted to include video. So they called me, and they said, is there a Mexican Bill Bayola? I mean, who does this stuff in Mexico? And in Mexico, we have a phrase that comes actually from the Mexican-American War, which there was this General Zaragoza. And when the Americans took this part of Mexico called Churubusco, they asked this general, they asked him, where are the weapons? Where is the powder? And this guy said, if there was powder, you guys would not be here, right? So, so I responded to these guys, who's the Mexican Bill Bayola? Well, if we had equipment, maybe you guys would not be there. It's like, you guys are the only guys that can produce this thing. If you guys want video art, let's make video art. So these guys said, okay, let's make it. So we attempted to do a video art piece with them, which was impossible because of course I had to work with a unit that was used to make news, and I didn't know what I was doing, and they neither. I mean, having this young kid telling them about weird angles and travelings around the earthquake, because it was after the Mexico City earthquake, and there were all these. So we couldn't really do it. But I really wanted to learn that. I mean, that's the reason why I came here. I wanted to go to CalArts. I wanted to do this, work with these new technologies. But it's not, I don't think it's necessarily, I mean, now that I think about it, it's not that I think that language, painting was worse or video was better, or I just think are different languages. It's like right now I'm talking to you in English because if I would talk in Spanish, maybe you wouldn't understand me. But it's not that one is going to be better than the other. They work in different ways, and I could communicate. In CalArts, it was very difficult for me to communicate what I wanted to communicate using paintings, because paintings were perceived as commodities that were collected, and therefore, objective knowledge could not come from the paintings. They always seemed to think that whatever I was doing in painting was this subjective personal trip. But if I would show a photograph, then they immediately would look at, oh, he took it in this place, therefore this must represent that place in an accurate manner, because we can see it there and the medium is transparent, which of course is not true. I mean, of course, I could, these photographs, for example, are an interesting example, because the scene, I don't know if there was such a punk scene. I mean, they are kind of a stage. I mean, it's not that you see the bands playing and it's more my fantasy of how I wanted to, and now I see them, I think that these stage setups are contradictory, and what interests me about it is that they are imperfect, that in fact they show this contradiction of these guys trying to fit in a place where they don't quite fit, and there's this tension. But at the time, they were perceived as these documentary images that were truthful because a punk kid was doing them. Kind of like later on I discovered when I was doing photographs in CalArts about Mexico, they were supposed to be good because since I was from there, maybe I knew what I was doing and there was some objective information. But not necessarily. I was just constructing things in a certain way. I mean, how do we construct this information? So I hope that responds to a certain degree, or at least revealed something of the process. Yes?
The text that you read to us, how does that relate to the show downstairs?
Well, it is a description of the persons that I describe in the text are the persons that you see in these photographs. So they are the persons that, and also talks about why I did these photographs, how I did the photographs, and how photography became, for me it's very interesting because at a certain point, there's these bands, if I would look for the recordings of the bands, they are terrible. I didn't know how to play at all, and I played in bands. I went on TV, and it didn't matter because the image was what, we were interested in the image, In a certain way, I cannot tell you that, although I cannot romanticize those days as the great days of Mexican punk, because the truth is that the bands now sound 1,000 times better. There are bands now. They really play well. We did not. I mean, we were terrible for the most part, you know. At the same time, some of the guys that I played with eventually became famous rock stars. One of the chapters where I talked about in the book is about this kid that left high school because he wanted to be a rock star. We personally thought he was mentally retarded. It's like, dude, you're wasting your life, your career, how are you gonna make a living? He became a rock star. And he could collect all the work at this point. I mean, the guy made a lot of money, and we thought he was crazy. I didn't like his music neither. I thought he was the less interesting of all these bands. But I don't know. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I'm sorry I have to cut you off. It's so sad, but I would invite you all to come downstairs and see Ruben's show. I think, Ruben, are you going to come downstairs too and be in your space? Thank you so much, and I'm sorry that we have to cut it short. We have another event, Baroque Theater at 7:50, but we'll continue our conversation with Ruben downstairs. Thank you, Ruben.